Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for bearing with us while we iron out some tech gremlins. Believe me, behind the scenes here, we are dealing with various different channels, and we're really looking forward to welcoming the Ukrainian Deputy Agricultural Minister very, very shortly. So do forgive us if we look like we are peddling water a little bit, but we will get there. This is such an amazing opportunity and moment for us to finally be back here in Oxford after 2 horribly disrupted years as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. And I have to say that personally, as chair of the Oxford Farming Conference, when I took over in January this year, I think I had a fair idea of what it was that I wanted us all to be thinking about in relation to the conference going forward, and the themes and the really big issues that we're going to be tackling as an industry going forwards. Then obviously the situation happened in Ukraine and everything changed. We went from a situation where we were dealing with multiple crises to dealing with conflict and the crises that was delivering as well. It really changed our thinking around what we needed to deliver for you as the delegates who are here today to enjoy the Fringe sessions, and also who are joining us in Oxford in January. The kind of messages, the kind of sort of feeling for the conference that we wanted to put across. All I can say to you is we do need this to be relentlessly optimistic in the face of the crises, in the face of the problems that we are all looking at and suffering with at the moment. We need to come together and begin to take more personal responsibility for making a difference and making those changes, and to ensure that together we farm a new future. That is absolutely where the core messaging behind this conference came from. We've got to face in and lean into these problems to make sure we keep learning from the lessons of history and don't repeat the mistakes of the past. So the housekeeping notes for today are really quite straightforward. It's a big welcome from me on behalf of all of the OFC Council to all of our amazing delegates. We're expecting loads of people online today for a full packed session of fringes organised by our partners and sponsors today. Please keep your microphones muted. All of your questions need to go into the chat. They will be monitored, and throughout the day, but particularly in this session as well, those questions will be monitored, and we will put those forward to the subsequent sessions today. Throughout the rest of the fringes, those housekeeping notes will be dealt with in each one, and the fringe hosts will be dealing with those questions specifically. But please don't forget that each of the sessions is being recorded. So obviously, if you need to nip out today, if you've got other meetings and stuff going on, we will make sure all of the sessions are recorded and are available after the event. But please do join in for as much of today as possible. As with everything in life, you get out what you put in. So please do join and take part, and support all of our sponsors who've made the effort to set on sessions today. An enormous thanks has to go to our headline sponsor, Trinity Natural Capital Group. Their support for this Fringe Day in particular means that it's available for free to a global audience, and we're really thrilled to welcome such a wide range of people onto this session today. A small plug for the conference itself. We are running here in Oxford, and we're in Oxford. It's amazing to be here on a beautiful, crisp winter day. We are here from the 4th to the 6th of January. There are some tickets still available, and there are loads of digital tickets as well if you can't join us in person. Please do come and join us. We really can't wait to get everybody back together for an amazing time. That's it from me for now. I will be handing over to Jeff Sampson, who will be looking after the next session, dealing with our guests from Ukraine. So I will pause now, and we will show you a video that's been sent by our Ukrainian counterparts over there. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine lasted more than 9 months. Tens of thousands of Ukrainian civilians lost their lives. Millions of people became refugees and were forced to move to safer places, many of whom sought shelter abroad. A lot of residential areas were completely destroyed. Also, civilian infrastructure, including roads, bridges, transmission lines, transformers, and so on, was severely damaged. Some areas that were liberated from Russians look like a moon landscape. After the withdrawal of Russian troops from the occupied territories, most farms and enterprises turned out to be destroyed. What the Russians could not take out and steal, they destroyed. The production of agricultural products decreased due to losses in the occupied territories and zones of active military operations. Part of the population ended up in the occupied territories. Due to the closure of many businesses, the purchasing power of the population has decreased, and therefore the critical issue of balancing the supply of products and a fall in the purchasing power of the population has arisen. Large producers can and are trying to solve this issue by increasing exports, while small and medium-sized enterprises are in tough conditions in Ukraine, since they cannot easily turn to export and raise prices due to the decrease in income of the majority of the population. Also, small and medium-sized producers have very limited access to product sales channels, such as large supermarket chains. The volume of gross production of agriculture has decreased, but the state ensures the minimum standards of consumption of the product per person. As for meat and meat products, it is 50 to 53 kilograms. Poultry meat and pork accounts for the largest share. Emergency and scheduled power outages directly affect the entire agriculture and food industry. Processing, food storage facilities, cafes, restaurants, grocery stores, and supermarkets, especially departments of frozen food like seafood and/or semi-finished foodstuffs. In some large cities of Ukraine, due to shelling, air alarms, and power outages, grocery stores and supermarkets do not work for 8 to 12 hours, which reduces the sale of goods, first of all the foodstuffs. There's also a typical catch-22. During the blackouts, many grocery stores and supermarkets operate cash only. At the same time, it's not possible to withdraw cash from the ATMs for the same reason, namely the electricity outage. Emergency and scheduled power outages disrupt the operation of animal farmers and producers. This is a grocery store that is closed because of the lack of electricity. Here we saw a mini bank that is also closed. A pharmacy, you can hear the sound of the power generator that some business use to provide electricity. Here we can see again a mini market and small grocery store and some small vendors over there. And this is how the residential area looks like in the time of blackouts. You can see light in some windows, but this is possible maybe because people have accumulator batteries at their apartments. Because of the blackouts, some businesses operate on the cash-only basis, so you have to have a cash. But at the same time, ATMs also do not operate because of the blackout. Here you see one of the ATMs. And here is another residential area during the blackout. Again, you can see some light in the windows, but that's most likely because people have the batteries at their homes. The Ministry of the Agrarian Policy and Food of Ukraine and Kyiv School of Economics assessed losses in Ukrainian agriculture due to the invasion of Ukraine as of September 15, 2022 to be $34.25 billion in United States dollars. Indirect losses take into account foregone income from reduced production and lower domestic prices, as well as additional costs that producers are forced to bear because of the war. The specified amount of $34.25 billion covers losses due to disruption in logistics and a decrease in prices for export-oriented goods, reduction in the production of agricultural crops, decrease in the production of animal husbandry products, increase in production costs, reduction in the production of perennial crops. More than 200 livestock farms were destroyed. Estimated losses amount to about 50 billion USD or euros. 15% of livestock farms and 10% of cows were destroyed. Almost 20% of the cattle were concentrated in the territories that are currently occupied where active hostilities are taking place. In the first months of the war, it was possible to partially relocate livestock and enterprises, but this was only possible on a small scale. The increase in the price of energy for industrial consumers increased the cost of logistics. The cost of production of livestock products is also affected by power outages due to damage to the electric power industry done by shelling of Russian troops. In order to ensure the normal production process, businesses are forced to buy electricity generators that run on diesel and gasoline, which increases the cost of production. But remember that man proposes, God disposes. But one must keep in mind the very important thing: the uncertainty in Ukrainian everyday life is dominant. How long war will last? What Russians will strike next? How serious it will be, especially for the infrastructure, including power generation and distribution, damages to roads and bridges, how cold next winter will be, and so on.
Good morning, and thank you, Yuri Mikhailov, for that video. Welcome, everyone, to this very special opening Fringe session. My name's Jeff Sansom, and I'm one of the Oxford Farming Conference directors. As directors, our focus has firmly been on Ukraine and what we can do to help raise awareness of the challenges that continue to face the country, and specifically our fellow Ukrainian farmers and agrarians. Our OFC bursary program was designed to support individuals facing social or economic barriers, with a strong commitment to any refugees who have moved to the UK. And I'm delighted to say we will have individuals from Ukraine joining us in conference in January. This morning, we're delighted to be joined by two speakers direct from Ukraine, Mr. Ivan Pankiv and Deputy Minister Dmytro Savich, who will join us at 9:30. Nearly a year ago, we all watched in growing horror as the Russian invasion of Ukraine unfolded. Since then, we've been exposed not only to the awful reality of the war in Ukraine, but we've also witnessed the tremendous resilience, determination, and brave actions of a proud nation defending their treasured homeland. The determination of the farmers to continue to sow, harvest, and transport their grain and oilseeds has been awe-inspiring, and we must salute them all and the people working with them and supporting them. Ukraine and its people hold a special place in my heart, as I was privileged to spend several years working in Ukraine with farmers, policymakers, and farming organizations, all of whom showed a determination to move on from former times. During that time, I worked closely with Mr. Ivan Pankiv, who is now the president of the National Association of Agricultural Advisory Services of Ukraine. And I'm delighted to welcome Ivan and to ask him to outline the work of his association and the help and support they are currently giving to Ukrainian farmers. To listen into the live translation, if you are in England, please click on the global icon at the bottom of the taskbar and select English. Then return to main audio when English is spoken. Thank you, Ivan.
Доброго дня вам. Мене звати Іван Панків, як вже сказав Джеф Сенсон. Я сільськогосподарський дорадник, директор Львівської аграрної дорадчої служби і одночасно президент Національної асоціації сільськогосподарських дорадчих служб України.
Advisory services in Ukraine. Today in Ukraine, there is war. And I would like to share a little bit how we are working and how Ukrainian villages live, and as well as those who help Ukrainian farmers. Actually, the second slide, please. On the 24th of February this year, a real scary war started, and Ukraine has changed. And in Ukraine, the active hostilities of Russia started. They started destroying our Ukraine and Ukrainians. Next slide, please. In Ukraine, the Russian army kills peaceful civilians, kills people who are not guilty in anything, and every day people are dying. It's both adults and small children. The whole of infrastructure is also being destroyed. The following slide. Next slide. They kill peaceful people, but before that, they also destroy houses, and now there's huge problem for Ukrainians, where Ukrainians are going to live this year. Social infrastructure is also being destroyed, like hospitals, schools, houses, bridges, roads, and presently it becomes even scarier because they're destroying the network of electric supply. People are in darkness, they cannot heat their facilities, they cannot communicate, and there is electricity just several hours per day. Next slide. The Russian army and the Russian mercenaries are killing people. They are raping women and girls. That's terrible. There hasn't been anything like that for many years, even during World War II. The German Nazi army wasn't as aggressive as now the Russians are. Next slide, please. They are bombing and destroying factories where people worked at and earned money, factories, airports, railway stations. Actually, they're destroying everything that you can get. Why? Because the Russian military cannot win over Ukrainian army. That's why they're destroying the whole of infrastructure. Next slide, please. Along with that, they are also destroying the farmers where there are animals. Just imagine a cow which is not to blame for anything, and they are actually shelling them from helicopters and planes. They are bombing them. They're destroying elevators and the fields where the crops used to grow. They're destroying bread and taking it out. Next slide, please. They are also robbing and looting houses. They take out TVs, fridges, cars, toilets, combines, tractors, even dog pens. You see that on those pictures, they even stealing dog pens. Next slide. In Ukraine, there is a problem not just with the production itself, but also how to sell those products, because we still have remaining crops of 2021. We also have grains of 2022. That's actually 22 tons of grain that has to be sold, 22 million tons, because it is required by citizens of other countries as food. Also, during the time of war, we have over 160,000 cows killed. They used to give milk and other food products, and the salary for those. Along with that, there is a huge problem. There is a growing price for the resources used by farmers. Just imagine, the diesel is now more expensive. It is now less available. Now it has to be used because there is no electricity often, and they spend twice or three times more. The farm, which during the previous period used to spend 1,000 liters of diesel, now spends 1,000 liters per week. So today, the cost of produced milk is 3.5 to 4 hryvnias. That's the cost of diesel. Men and women also went to armed forces, to the front lines. They became refugees. So in the villages, there are no hands to work. The Russian occupants entered 8 regions of Ukraine. Next slide.
областей України були
5 regions of Ukraine were partially occupied. Today, Russians still remain on the territory of Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, a part of Kherson region, in the Crimea, and a part of Kharkiv region. Also, these territories of regions, they require support because it is impossible to do any agricultural production over there because there are constant missile shellings, there are bombs and mines. Due to those shellings, a lot of people were hurt, over 250,000. And I think today it's about 300,000 houses and apartments were destroyed. People don't have anywhere to live. Over 1,300 children have been injured, and including 440 killed during the active hostilities. 333 children went missing. Now they are looking for them. Next slide, please. Some families don't have any jobs because the farms were destroyed, the fields were burned, as well as the houses, and they cannot have any business anymore. But I also would like to say that presently many countries provide help to Ukrainians and take them in their territories. For example, Brazil, Canada, New Zealand, your country, England and the UK, Portugal, the Netherlands, Italy. And we have to say special thanks to you, the British, for your support, and to the Poles, who received the most Ukrainians in this month's. Next slide. Other farmers who stayed in place have to work in dire conditions. They try to collect their crops, give some food to the cows, but part of them is still working on occupied territories even. How is this going to happen? How should these people live and work? Should they stop the activities altogether, or should they keep working? These are the questions that concern many Ukrainians now. Next slide, please. Farmers on free territories help the army. They volunteer. They make products for the army and for people who are fleeing occupied territories. They take them in. They keep them warm in their houses. Next slide, please. Farmers spend all available resources to do something, to sow the fields, to collect crops, and also to produce milk, vegetables, potatoes. Next slide, please. A huge part of farmers, and they don't just help the army, but they also want to fight themselves. I know many of my clients, farmers who are working with, they or their family members or their employers are now fighting in the front lines. And also I wanted to talk a bit about those who provide consultations and information to the farmers. These are agricultural advisors. By the way, before the creation of this, there was IDA's company, and Jeff was helping us in 1998 and 2000. Some advisors also went to fight in the front line and also to territorial communities. Here on the photos, you see our advisors. The next slide, please. The advisors pay a lot of attention to volunteering, and they collect resources. They transport and deliver them to the places of action, also for refugees who work who have left their territories. Next slide, please. The advisors also pay a lot of attention to hosting and settling refugees because the image of advisors, their reputation is pretty high. They communicate with village families, with the farmers, and they agree also that families and some people were taken in by families of the farmers. Next slide. In these conditions, we are also looking for partners who would help financially with the resources to the producers. Maybe somebody could provide seed material, because this year part of seed materials of potatoes are provided, also for herbs, corn, veterinary medications, feed. And today there's also diesel power generators and also other energy sources that could be used by the farmers. Next slide. The advisors continue working because farmers want to hear someone, they want communication, and they agree to online meetings, but still for farmers, it is more acceptable to have face-to-face communication. So we are working in small groups, 5 to 10 people, sometimes even 2, 3 people, but still we go out locally, we organize trainings, meetings, and visit farmers. Next slide. There are several things that can concern us here. This is how to survive in these conditions and how do we survive this year. How do we survive the war and not get frozen in these conditions that we have today in Ukraine? For farmers, there is not enough money, and for advisors especially, and we understand that advisory services which were compensated in the previous year from the budget, they are not going to be compensated this year. The following slide.
Next slide.
Also, presently, we have communication and cooperation with the European organizations of advisors like EU FRAS, and we thank them for the support because they support us in communication and studies. Even a group of our young advisors is now getting trained. Next slide. In September, we also had a meeting. We talked about our work of advisors in Ukraine at the forum EU FRAS, which happened in Leuven, close to Brussels. And we have this idea that members of EU FRAS could cooperate with some advisory services and help them. Next slide. Next slide. Also, we are counting on participation of Ukraine through IPART system and getting some resources for the support of advisors. Next slide. But we still believe that Ukraine will win. We believe that we'll be able to win this war and protect not just Ukraine, but the whole world. That is why we have to help farmers and move towards victory, not lose hope, and keep Ukrainian state. Next slide. Ukraine is there. Ukraine will always stay. Ukraine will win. And Ukraine will live in a happy, big family of Europeans, European countries, and other partners like the UK, the US, and Canada. Thanks everyone who understands us and supports us, and we invite you to further support us. Today, we need your help. If you're interested in communication, we will happily do that. But here also, just in my last words, the last slide, I would like to thank you for listening to me and also thank this community, a lot of involved people, to IDA's company, the trainers on advisory who in 1998 to 2000 actually set a good beginning for the development of agriculture advisory in Ukraine. Special thanks to the chief of this program, Jeff Sanson. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. Our heart and our best wishes go out to you and your colleagues who are working at the supporting farmers in this very, very, very difficult time. So, dziękuję, Ivan.
Thank you.
Okay. We should now have been joined by the Deputy Minister, Markian Dmitrasevich, live from Kyiv. And I'm very grateful to him for standing in at the last minute, as Minister Solsky has been called away to an urgent meeting with the President, which we totally understand. So it gives me great honor to introduce Markian Dmitrasevich, the Deputy Minister of Agrarian Policy and Food of Ukraine, who will give an address and then take your questions. Minister, on behalf of everyone here, I would like to thank you sincerely for finding time in your hectic schedule. We are very grateful and look forward to hearing from you. Laskava prosimo, pane Dmytrusevich, za честь говорити за вами.
Дякую, вітаю, шановне
Thank you.
товариство.
Greetings. Colleagues, thank you for the invitation to speak before you and tell you about the latest challenges that the agricultural sector of Ukraine has had to face. I'm not going to hide it from you. I would be more happy to tell you about the results that our farmers managed to achieve, because Ukrainian agriculture is really powerful. It used to be powerful. It used to, because all our plans and prospects are destroyed by the enemy. The enemy kills our people, destroys our houses and our infrastructure. They leave us without heating and electricity, but they will never, and again, never will take away our aspiration to be free. Armed aggression, daily shellings and losses, everything that can dampen the resolve of any people, but Ukrainians are united and unbreakable. It is not our rule to just sit and wait around. We keep fighting and working in spite of everything. Unfortunately, I have to say that since the beginning of the Russian invasion, Ukrainian sector of agriculture has weakened significantly. We faced many problems which are caused by the military invasion. Due to the war, we haven't managed to sow about 30% of the areas dedicated for that. We also had unfavorable weather, which significantly complicated the collection of crops. For example, the situation with the collection of corn. This is what is exported the most by Ukraine. Presently, about 40% of grown crops remain in the fields. When is it going to be collected? Due to the threat from the occupants and the weather, we cannot say. What kind of quality the grain would be, it's also unknown. But for sure, it's going to be lower than normally. The total volume of crops is going to decrease. We expect the grains and oil-bearing crops of 65 million tons in total. For example, in 2021, our agriculture collected 108 million tons. Previously, preliminarily from the expected volume, the expected export of main cereals, wheat and corn, will be about 30 million tons. This is much less compared to the previous years. The opportunities and ways to export grain are also today an extremely acute issue for Ukrainian agriculture. Due to military aggression, we lost the opportunity of sales, but we are thankful with the Partners for Development of Solidarity routes, which allow to export a significant part of food by using our western borders. We are also thankful for the powerful work of our partners for the grain corridor to keep functioning from Odessa ports. The export by sea allows us to transport more crops with less logistical losses. However, unfortunately, no one can guarantee work of grain initiative without disruptions in the future. This means that our farmers have no confidence in further prospects of selling their products that they have grown. Already now they suffer huge losses due to their expenses for fertilizers, fuel, insurance, and other necessary sources for production and export. The liquidity of agricultural products is minimal. Sometimes it is even negative. The selling price of the grain is rather low, and logistics has become much more expensive compared to the period before 24th of February this year. Farmers do not get enough income and have no chance to pay salaries, to buy seed materials for the new year, fuel, fertilizers, chemicals, and other things that they need. Low profitability has already impacted the sowing of winter grains and is going to impact the amounts which are going to be sown in spring. The forecast for the future for now is rather pessimistic. Farmers have to sow about 4.8 million hectares of winter grains. Last year, they sowed 8.3 million hectares. Compared to the previous year, a lot less winter grains are sown. This can further be decreased because we don't know what other hits can be blown by the enemy and what kind of consequences it can have. I'll separately say about the decrease of areas of sown corn. The main reason is the late collection of current crops, and therefore the impossibility to prepare the lands for the following season in a good way. The decrease of sown areas is also impacted by the high cost of nitrogen fertilizers. According to our data, the volume of consumption and sales of nitrogen fertilizers compared to the previous year decreased by 4 times, even more of that. All these are signs that farmers are going to prefer other crops, for example, sunflower. There is a trend in the decrease of total volumes of grown grain. Along with that, we should expect even more fall in export and therefore even more growing prices for food products. As a result, it can cause the exacerbation of global food crisis. We have no right to allow that. The efforts of Ukraine in the attempts to guarantee food safety of the world are demonstrated by the fact that even now, in the context of war, we started a humanitarian food initiative, Grain from Ukraine. In the framework of the program, with the support of partners, we export our products to the countries which need that the most. We have an understanding that even by consolidating our efforts all together, we're able to prevent the exacerbation of global food crisis. We're thankful for all help that we get, but the struggle becomes more active on all front lines. Therefore, we require even more powerful support of our partners. The problems are going to last just as long as the war lasts. Plus, we would need some more time for restoration. We're not complaining about the circumstances. We're adapting and looking for alternative solutions to improve the work of agriculture in the context of war. We thank you for being with us and for us in this struggle for survival. Today, the first priority for us is to provide farmers with an opportunity to have simplified loans for the following sowing and harvest collection campaigns. This will help farmers to get the necessary financial support to have quality sowing campaign the following year, and in general will become an impetus to continue their important work. We are really counting on your further support to bring our common victory closer together. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister, and thank you so much for your presence. We do have time for a few questions, if that's fine with you. And the first one regards accession into the European Union. Your application for EU candidate status was made 4 days after the invasion, and you were granted candidate status in June. And we really must congratulate you and your colleagues for the effort which went into achieving that. And you now have an ambitious program, possibly entering the EU fully in 2014. I think we would be interested to know what are the main challenges in the agrarian sector in meeting the terms of accession, and how much is this a priority for you and your colleagues?
Дякую за запитання.
Thank you for the question. It's true that now there is
До європейського, яке є безумовно
Ukrainian legislation with European one, which is the condition of Ukraine full-scale joining the EU. It is a priority for the government and our ministry in particular. It is clear that it is rather hard to organize work in the conditions when our employees, our partners and experts don't have electricity or don't have access to the internet, but still Ukraine is on the way towards European Union, and it has shown that a lot of obligations that were put up in the association agreement that has already been done. So we continue this work, In the first quarter of the following year, we expect to get results of the screening of the progress in implementation, in particular in the field of sanitary and phytosanitary measures in agricultural sector. And again, we are going to update those programs which are in the association agreement with regard to the new additional terms that are going to be put up. Still, all the main conditions of a more political nature, which were voiced when providing Ukraine with the candidate status. Ukraine is now actively implementing those and showing progress in that issue. So this priority of European integration is very important, and we're moving along the way despite all the obstacles that we have. And here we are helped a lot by our partners who provide us with expert support and often with financial, material, equipment support. So again, I would like to thank all our partners who are involved in this process.
Thank you very much. We have several questions which are asking, how can British farmers and non-government organizations directly help your farmers? If there's any suggestions as to how they can provide direct support, we would be very pleased to hear them.
Так, дякую за запитання.
Yes, thank you for the question. Actually, I would like to emphasize again that we get huge support from the UK. That's the military support and there's financial and material support. And I would like to underline that even emotional support, the words of solidarity and support, that's also extremely important for us. We appreciate that. As for helping to the farmers, now we have more problems emerging with the unfolding of hostilities in Ukraine. Now the biggest need is diesel power generators or other power generators to sustain the industry. And again, we also seeds material for the following sowing campaign next year. These needs are all published now official website of the ministry. So I urge British farmers to look at our website, at these materials, contact the ministry. We have lots of needs, and we encourage any addresses, any help with our agriculture associations, and farmers will be able to correctly and transparently distribute that help that could be provided.
Thank you. A question from Kate Jones. She thanks you for such an inspirational address and would like to ask if the invasion has had an impact on farmers' priorities in terms of, are they more focused on producing food for the local Ukrainian market, or are they more focused on producing different food products, for instance?
Here we have to understand the structure of our agricultural industry in general. For our internal consumptions, we have about we consume about 20% from what we used to produce. It was pre-war, of course. So we are export oriented and we keep trying to export our products. Here we have those problems that I have already mentioned in my address. That's very expensive logistics, that's low domestic prices for the grain and other products. And still, export is a source of income for both our farmers and the state in general, in the form of taxes and other payments.
We have one more question I would like to put to you, and this is from our Farming Community Network. It's an organization which helps our own farmers in times of stress and need. And it says, thank you to both our Ukrainian speakers. Our hearts and prayers are with you and your people. What key message would you like us in England to share with our UK politicians and government officials to support you?
Ключовий меседж
The
це
key message would be to pay attention to the role of Ukraine in providing global food security. This war and this year have shown, highlighted the role of Ukraine. And maybe before we didn't think enough about its importance. And in the context of that, I would like to stress, and I ask you to stress in your conversations, that the best way, the fastest way to get rid of all those problems, like both in agricultural sector in Ukraine and problems on the global food market, would be to defeat the Russian army in Ukraine, to deblock the ports, and to come back to normal functioning.
Thank you. We must close now. So I would like to thank you, Deputy Minister Dimitrasevich, for taking the time to address us in what are difficult circumstances for you. Your presence and your words have inspired us, and they do help us to put our own issues into perspective. We have nothing but admiration and respect for your work, the efforts you and your colleagues are going to in supporting your farmers, and the outstanding leadership this demonstrates. And I look forward to a more peaceful time when we can continue this cooperation face to face. Дякую, пане Дмитросевич. Це було чудово.
дуже
Слава
дякую вам.
Україні.
Дякую за
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Your support is invaluable. Just believe us. Glory to the heroes, and thanks again.
Thank you. Just a reminder to all delegates, this session has been recorded and it will be available to watch back on demand in the next few days. And I do apologize for those who have joined late due to some technical issues. These are sorted now, so I apologize for that. If you missed it, please do watch the rerun. Our next session is titled Net Zero Future, a global perspective on transitioning to a sustainable farming future. And it's hosted by Map of Ag and will start at 10 a.m. in a few minutes. You will need to use a different Zoom link, which can be found in the chat or on any of your confirmation emails. And if you would like to join us in January, tickets to attend in person or online are still on sale at www.ofc.org.uk. Thank you and see you at Oxford.